Welcome to That 80s Show. Dori, I got to ask you a question. Burning question.
So early?
So early, burning question. When do we stop with Kate Bush? Because, like we said on Facebook the other day, right? If it was so easy to get running up that hill to number one, such a big song, when do we stop trying to get Babooshka back onto the charts?
Well, I mean, why stop at Babooshka? There's so many other songs. And I don't know if you've seen all the posts about how basically she makes all the money.
Yes.
There's no there's no licensing company and all that kind of stuff. So we are as her fans and her new fans, who are the people watching Stranger Things, making a millionaire overnight, basically. I mean, I'm not saying she wasn't already a millionaire, but we don't know. The point is, we're making her lots of money right now.
Right now.
The power is in our hands.
It's in our hands, even though we didn't start the show with one of her songs. but no rest.
We did that last week.
We did that last week. No rest until Babooshka is number one. This is That 80s Show. Dori, you have been a bit under the weather, but you are back. Are you mobile? Are you in person? Or?
I am mobile. I think my voice sounds more or less normal,
yes.
Which it did not.
Yes.
It did not at all. I sounded like a very grumpy old man.
And is it too lazy a segue for me to say, speaking of grumpy old men, I've got some Queen news.
No, that works perfectly.
That works perfectly. New music coming out from Queen in September, apparently. Yeah, there's a new song that they recorded years ago. They recorded for the 13th studio album in 1989. The song's called Face It Alone. It was recorded 2 years before Freddie Mercury passed away. It's sat in the vaults, and they've finally decided, well, you know what? Because this Queen money-making machine will outlive every single member of Queen, plus every queen in the history of the world.
Are they just going to keep replacing them as they go?
It's like, where does all this music come from all the time?
I mean, I suppose artists have songs that they write and then go, nah, this one doesn't really work with the album, and then they put it aside and maybe forget about it for a while.
Like, have you seen that picture of Prince's recording studio, one of the storerooms? In that,
no,
Prince recorded so much music and so many songs that they could release a new album every year for the next 20 years or something. You got to know, some of that's got to stink. Like, there's a reason Prince, who's like a musical genius, really would have gone, no, I don't want that out. So I think there must be some stipulations.
And it's still probably better than most of the music coming out today.
That's for sure. For sure.
I am a grumpy old man.
You are. I was so excited last week. We didn't do a live show. I was so excited. Because I found something. You know, you go down these little rabbit holes, and I found on Voyage Voyage. We love Voyage Voyage, one of our favorite songs ever. And now, of course, it gives you other suggestions of French minimal synth pop, which is allegedly what Voyage Voyage fits into. Okay.
Hang on. The genre is minimal synth pop, not just French synth pop.
So they must be, because Voyage Voyage is layer upon layer. I mean, that song is an odyssey. It is a voyage. There's just so many things happening, never mind the music video. So I doubt Voyage Voyage is minimal. But there is a genre called French minimal synth pop. And once you click, because you find French minimal synth pop, then you find Soviet wave synth pop, then you just German synth, you just go deep. But French minimal synth pop is my new favorite thing. I want you to take a listen to this, and then I'm going to describe to you. So it's some music variety show. Okay, imagine any music variety show that you saw on TV. For us, it was probably Noot for Noot, right? Where you've got like a over flamboyant host speaking to young up and comers. I mean, it's like ripped off versions of Top of the Pops. That's what everything was, right? And there is an over flamboyant guy speaking to a pretty young French thing about her new song, and then they start playing it. Take a listen to this. I don't know the name of the band. I think it is called something like, here it is, Hand in Hand. It's called Hand in Hand. I don't have the name of the band. But Dori, what an outrageous performance you have just seen in front of your eyes.
It is, I will admit, very minimal.
Oh, it is super minimal. So
the minimalism is evident.
So what you have there is like, it's just these backdrop curtains. There is a guy playing a synthesizer, but he's like way too cool to be there. He's wearing a suit. He's very mod. He's very like, if you remember the mod fashion, like 60s, 70s, early 80s. He's very mod, very cool, white loafers. He's playing the synthesizer wearing sunglasses. It's on like a Perspex, like a table stand. The synthesizer isn't even plugged in. That's how minimal it is.
It's a remote. It's a remote synthesizer.
Yes, it's Bluetooth. It's Bluetooth. And the lady that you heard, she's wearing a very fetching short red dress. Lovely gold arm. I don't know, those arm bracelets from this is from 1980, so they're still carrying quite a lot of 70s styles, but those arm bracelets that you wore like high up in your arm, not wrist, like arm bracelets. Like, so she's wearing that, and she's singing. And so that is a song called Hand in Hand, but it's lovely.
And Paulo, she is singing, but she's also dancing minimally.
It's like, you cannot imagine minimal. Like, imagine the least effort people have put into this thing. Like, you've had it now for the past 13 minutes. The least effort anybody can put into anything, it's that, but in French.
But here's my question. It looks like they've put a mat down for her to dance on the floor.
She's wearing, look, that floor looks like, I mean, it's obviously a sound stage, and she has got like super high heels on. So I imagine that mat helps her with traction, or she's going to be doing like a minimal splitting of her body, like she tries to move around. So that's the rabbit hole, right? So you find this, and I go, oh my God, this is fantastic. There is a whole channel. It's called a channel called Our Sounds Electric, which, I mean, these sounds are electric. I want to read you some of the bands. So in this playlist is Yazoo Only You, but a French version, okay? Another band called Poem Electronique, The Echoes Fade. Neon Licht, that's another band. Then, this is where I say, Vintage Czech Synth Pop, Soviet Synth Pop, Vintage Mouge, Amanda Lear's Dreamy Synths. Then you got Franco-Italian Synth Pop. I mean, literally, I disappeared for 2 days down this French minimalistic synth pop rabbit hole with my lovely friend singing Hand in Hand with the unplugged synthesizer.
And you live to tell the tale.
No, this is amazing. And this is why people say, oh, will you ever run out of 80s things to talk about? It's like, no, there are corners of 80s that it would take, and like us, it takes you longer to unpack the decade than the decade lasted. We've been doing the show for longer than the 80s lasted. And that's why we got to get into all these areas and find the 80s stuff and just tell people about them. Are we doing our jobs? No, we're not. Sorry.
It's so funny. I'm just looking at some of the comments on the YouTube video, and this one comment says, when I was away at sea in the 80s, I heard some fantastic synth pop in Italy and Germany. Doesn't that just conjure up an image for you?
Oh, God. The things that man must have seen being away at sea.
In the 80s. Imagine being away at sea in the 80s.
Oh, God.
I have very strong village people vibes right now. Anyway.
Do you think?
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you for telling me about vintage French minimal synth pop.
And I guarantee you it will not be the last time we talk about it.
I'm sure not.
So on that 80s show, we do love bringing you movie recommendations, movie and TV show recommendations, and it's gone from being reviews to recommendations to referrals to recommendations, because they make you rich when you watch these films and even think about them.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. I like that.
I like it. I like it.
But because all, things that are old are new again, you can't have a 80s song on the top of the hit parades and not have a movie, Top Gun Maverick, $900 million. It'll probably break $1 billion this weekend. I mean, we love Tom Cruise. Do we love Top Gun? Do we love 80s? Do we love movies? What is happening here?
Have you seen it?
but I feel I have to. I'm not a Tom Cruise fan, but I feel like I've got to be part of this thing.
And I, as I've said, have not been to movies for years, long before COVID. But I feel like this might be the one that gets me back into a movie house. It might be the one. Just for the nostalgia factor. I don't know. Like, and I wasn't a big fan of Top Gun. It wasn't a favorite movie of mine.
We've spoken about this before, and how do you not? I wasn't a big fan of Top Gun, but I mean, it's iconic. I mean, that is not just as an 80s movie. It's like one of the iconic movies, got great songs.
I'm a bigger fan of the soundtrack than the movie.
Exactly. So, exactly, right? Kenny Loggins, Songs to Fly To. That's the name of the soundtrack. It's not. But how can you go watch Top Gun Maverick, which is like, it's homage. Like, it's definitely going to be, like, do you think there's fan service? And then if there is fan service, do you go, oh God, why did you do that? Because already, like, we know Lady Gaga has done the Berlin type Take My Breath Away song. There are rumors, I don't want to look into them. I'm really not interested in looking into them, that there is a Highway to the Danger Zone variation. And then there is a volleyball scene. Like,
yes, I've heard there is a volleyball scene.
Like, what do we do? What are we going to do here?
We're going to go watch it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go watch it.
Got to like pick the cheaper day, because I know I'm going to get so angry by it, because the second I hear, I think it's One Republic doing their Highway to the Danger Zone song. Like, you don't, I don't know. That's going to be tricky for me. And then, like I say, Tom Cruise's self-satisfaction just splurging out the screen at me. Like, now it's his highest grossing movie ever. And this guy's done Mission Impossible. So it is hit, and there's going to be sequels.
What do you think it is? I mean, like, obviously there's a certain part of the audience that are going to be, I loved it in the 80s, and of course I'm going to go see this. But are there people who are just like, oh yeah, I definitely want to go watch Tom Cruise in another movie?
I wonder if it's not like,
figure out what the draw card is.
I think it's like COVID-y thing. Like, so think about people who haven't been to the movies since COVID and haven't had a reason to go. And there have been big releases, but I mean, they've been very niche. They've been like superhero movies. And even then, like, kind of like, so if you want to go and get great date, good people are dating, IMAX experience, taking the family, go experience like this really, like, I mean, it's an experience because it was shot for IMAX. I said, don't even waste your time not watching it in IMAX, because that's what it was created for. You go, okay, cool. It's like a spectacle, and I haven't been to the movies in ages, and let's see. And then you've got to choose. Do I pay rent? The price of petrol getting to the movies is twice the price of the cinema ticket. So, like, it's a big choice. So I wonder if there's just a lot of like post-COVID, I just got to get out there stuff. I had somebody on Twitter say to me the other day, they said, just seen Top Gun Maverick, where can I find the original? And I was like, well, yeah. There's a young person.
I mean,
or sis. But they came to Uncle Palu for 80s advice. They had, Uncle Palu, like, where can I find it? And I was like, a VHS store. And they're like, what's a VHS? And I was like, well, it's like what we put movies on before. And they're like, oh, like a DVD. I was like, no, before that. I'm going to battle with the music. I'm going to be like, if you try to do the music, I'm not going to be down with it.
I mean, this is why I have not seen any of the remakes. I have not seen the Footloose remake.
Ugh.
We won't even speak of it.
People trying to live off 80s nostalgia. So, Dori, tell me what your movie is this week.
So, for my movie this week, I hesitate to call it a recommendation. It's just a movie that I kind of forgot existed, and then was reminded because I was driving along in my car the other day, spending lots of money on petrol, and heard a song from the original of this movie. The movie I'm talking about today is a sequel, which is unusual that we would even bother talking about a sequel. But the reason
whoa.
Oh, I see what I've just done.
In there can be an argument for some movies. Was Rocky 2 better? Which Rambo was better? But when you're talking about sequels, I mean, we talk about Back to the Future 2 all the time. being the superior sequel. No, we've actually made the concession.
Speak about it.
We made the concession. We made the concession. People don't know. Back to the Future 1 and 2 was never supposed to be two separate movies. It was all supposed to be one very long movie, but at the time, like, they didn't want long movies. Now 3-hour movies are great. They didn't want them back then. So if it was not for that, Back to the Future 1 and 2 would be the one movie. That makes Back to the Future
the greatest movie of all time.
The greatest movie ever, right? That'll make Back to the Future 3, Back to the Future 2, and rightfully so, the shitty sequel. So continue.
The original of my movie came out in the 70s, but was set in the 60s. My movie came out in the early 80s. As a sequel, it's still set in the 60s. So it's kind of a continuation of the story in a way.
So it came out in the...
My movie is...
Wait, you're doing your parallel paradox Saint elsewhere
No,
thing.
I'm not. I promise. It's very simple this week. So simple.
The original
My movie
came out
in 1982.
Right.
The original came out in 1978.
Right.
But was set in the 60s.
Okay.
Mine came out in 1982, still set in the 60s, because it kind of follows on from the first one.
Okay.
There's a reason I wanted to talk about this movie. Like I said, I heard a song from the original in the car and then went, in fact, I was driving with my kid and they were like, this is a cool song. And I was like, yeah, actually, the soundtrack is really good. The movie itself is, And then I was like, but you know what? I had the soundtrack to the sequel of this on cassette tape. And then I went into the rabbit hole of my brain, Paulo, my brain rabbit hole of my teenage memories. And I remembered so much about this movie that I thought I have to talk about it on the show now. I'm talking about the movie that actually made Michelle Pfeiffer famous. I'm talking about Grease 2 today.
Dori, you're the best. Grease 2 sucks. It's so bad. It's worse than Staying Alive. We should have done a double header.
So this is the thing. This is the thing that people go, oh, Grease 2, awful. I mean, it was a flop. It was a flop. The critics hated it. Disaster, right? But not to me. To me, I enjoyed Grease 2. But let me give some context to that statement. I saw Grease 2 when it came out in the movies, and I was thinking there's no way in hell it came out in South Africa in 1982 because I would have been 9. And I definitely remember having more of a teenage experience about this. So chances are it came out here, I would even hazard a guess at maybe even 84.
So
where I would have been 10.
Two things I want to pick up.
Going
Yes, okay. So two things I want to pick up there. Okay, so firstly, just to explain to people, if you're listening to this from another country, in South Africa, movies came out here very, very late. It was kind of like, look, movies now come out very quickly because of pirating and things like that. But it was kind of like to maximize the summer market. So obviously we Southern Hemisphere, so our market. So if a movie comes out in a big summer movie in July in America, it's probably only coming out here in November, December, which is our holiday season. So that was one of the reasons. Then the other reason was it just had to go through like a lot of censorship to make sure that like, you know, there wasn't
all the censorship,
all the censorship. So that's why movies would come out later. But then I was going to go, ooh, what is Dori meaning by saying a teenage experience? But then you were 10. So I was like, okay, never mind. I'll let that one. I'll leave that as a loose end.
So maybe, you know how memory is fallible and all that kind of stuff. So I'm probably remembering it wrong. But I do remember going and watching it on the big screen, really enjoying it. I, at that point, had not watched the original Grease. I knew the soundtrack because my dad had it on vinyl and used to play it a lot.
Oh, everyone
so I
knew
knew
the
the soundtrack, but I hadn't watched the movie.
Yeah.
I only ended up watching the original Grease after Grease 2.
Okay.
Years later, probably. But I enjoyed it. First of all, Michelle Pfeiffer was really cool, actually. And she's pretty good in it. And it's like, like it was her breakout role and all that kind of thing. But it had all those things that kind of appeal to a teenager and a kid because it's a musical. Let's not forget it's a musical. I'm not a big fan of musicals, but as I said, I had the soundtrack to this on cassette, which I probably would have bought after watching the movie. And I remember the songs because I was going through them on YouTube, and I remember the songs so well. I could sing along to them.
Yeah.
Because I used to listen to that soundtrack a lot. And there's some good songs on it. Yes, it's set in the 60s. So it's got a bit of a 60s vibe as opposed to an 80s vibe. But the actual movie itself has, it's got that whole 80s vibe to it. And the thing is, I remember this is what like came back to my brain, my nostalgic brain. I remember going to a fancy dress party, and it was probably when I was in primary school. So I probably would have been maybe 11 or 12. And I remember dressing as a pink lady. Now, the pink ladies were in Grease 2. There were the T-Birds and the pink ladies. Those were in inverted commas, we'll call them the gangs of the school.
Yeah.
And the pink ladies were the ones, and Michelle Pfeiffer was like the leader of the pink ladies. And I remember I had a pink tracksuit. Oh. And I remember writing the words pink ladies on paper and coloring it in with Cokie and cutting it out and sticking it onto my tracksuit with press stick. I remember doing that.
Because that was, I mean, if you live in some sort of hole and have never seen any sort of Grease reference, it's like a pink bomber jacket that the pink ladies wore that you got as soon as you joined the gang, like a really shiny bomber jacket, just so kitsch.
Yeah, no, I mean, their clothes were really cool. My pink tracksuit was not that fancy at all, but it was all I had. And yeah, I mean, and it had the pink ladies written in like really cool cursive kind of font on it. Mine was probably not quite as fancy, but I remember that, and I remember just enjoying that whole vibe of Grease 2. And like I say, the songs were nostalgic, and so for me, it's not an awful movie in my brain, in my memory.
So.
If you compare it to the original Grease, maybe it is terrible. But the original Grease, I mean, I don't know if you've watched it lately or remember. I mean, it is dated so terribly.
Well, so that's that's what I was going to say. I mean, like John Travolta's face, he's like on face version for Olivia Newton-John. Like, don't even, just, I will not hear a bad word said. I mean, that's,
nothing to say. Nothing bad to say about Olivia.
It has dated terribly. It was very much of the time. It was, but not of the 80s time. It was of the 60s time. So it's kind of like things acceptable then, we're gonna try to get away with now. If I remember, Grease 2 wasn't as crude as Grease 1, because Grease 1 was like, there was a lot of inappropriate stuff. And I remember Grease 2 was a little bit more sanitized, if I'm not mistaken.
A little bit more, but there is one song which is absolutely worth watching. I will put the link on Facebook. There's a song where they're in biology class and they sing a song called Reproduction.
Okay.
And it's very sexual and it's very like, risque and got all the puns and stuff like that. And it's a fun song actually. And in the music video, they're like, dancing suggestively in the classroom and that kind of thing. And it's like, first of all, everybody looks like they're in their 30s. They're supposed to be high school kids. They look like they're in their 30s. They're not, actually. I actually looked up how old were the cast members during it. And they were in their early 20s, most of them.
It's the same thing with Grease 1, that they also looked older. But think about like photos you've seen of people that from the 60s. And like, they looked old as shit. I mean, life was rough. Like, there was no moisturizer. There was no like sun safety.
And also it was like kind of early 80s. So it was before, the makeup thing was a big deal. Also, so there's not a lot of makeup going on. But, I suppose for the woman, not so much for the men.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to mention, I'm not even going to get into the storyline. The storyline is inconsequential. But one other thing I want to mention, this movie stars, and I'm not going to say his name correctly, Adrian Zmed.
Right.
Maybe that's the only way to say his name. Now, you remember Adrian Zmed. I remember Adrian Zmed from TJ Hooker.
Let me click on this picture.
I remember him.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the partner in TJ Hooker.
Yes.
I just remember him from there.
Okay.
So this, this movie launched some careers. Christopher McDonald as well.
Yeah.
Who you might not know the name, but if you look at him, you'll know exactly who he is. He also got like his starring role here. So let's not sweep it under the carpet as such.
So our movies live in a similar wheelhouse. You would find them if you were in a DVD shop, like buying DVD, but there are no such things anymore. If you were said, okay, well, here is the discount rack at the DVD store, and you're going, they're looking like action, right? I've got these comedy, right? Musical. Our movies would probably be together, because when my movie came out, they didn't know what to call it. Now, we know mockumentaries these days. We all know what they're about. Borat is huge, and Parks and Recreation and The Office and so many sitcoms have that kind of mockumentary type feel where it's like first person, that kind of speaking to the camera thing. When my movie came out, no one really knew what to do with it because it was like, what is a mockumentary? And if you don't know, a mockumentary is a fake documentary. You take all the things of a documentary. It's normally unscripted, but it is definitely made to look like a documentary, a spoof on documentaries, if you will. It's one of those movies that you're first going to go, that movie's not from the 80s. And then secondly, you're going to go, I can't believe we don't speak about this movie more. So in this mockumentary, they followed around a fictional English rock band on their comeback American tour, right? They did it so well that the movie kind of flopped because people didn't realize it was fake. They go, who's this band? We don't, where are they performing? And it's actually, the joke kind of went over a lot of people's heads. It was directed by Rob Reiner, who's actually in the movie. In the movie, he plays the role of the documentary filmmaker. Names in there, other actors in there are Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer. Now, those are people that you won't know if when you see them, you go, oh, I know that guy. Michael McKean was in You Better Call Saul. And Harry Shearer is the voice of Mr. Burns, a couple of other characters on Simpsons, but that's what he's mostly known for. The movie is called, and it's one of the iconic all-time cult movies, This Is Spinal Tap.
Do you know how close I came to doing this movie not long ago?
The funniest rock movie ever made about the best rock band you've never heard. It is actually, it's such an iconic movie. It is in the Library of Congress and is selected for preservation by the National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. That's how big a movie this is, and it is just a really over-the-top, silly movie. So when you were going to recommend it, Dori, why? Why were you going to recommend it?
So the reason I haven't yet is because I need to rewatch it.
Right.
I watched it so long ago. I only remember bits of it. I do remember it being incredibly funny and incredibly clever. And for those reasons, it is iconic and it has an interesting cast. Yeah. And it's just, and I mean, it's very 80s actually.
It's very 80s.
All those things.
It's got like a very, obviously the rock band, I mean, it's early 80s, so the rock band is kind of like 70s English punk band inspired. And it's this rock band called Spinal Tap. They're coming to America, and this is the documentary about their tour. But the tour, I mean, there's a running gag about how their drummers keep dying, and the drummers die. Like there's a gardening accident. The one guy bursts into flames. The one guy, they tell the story, he choked on someone else's vomit. And then they just follow them through, and there's a whole bunch of stupid scenes, like when they're going through the metal detector at the airport, and he removes, the guy removes all the metal, except she keeps scanning over his crotch, and we all led to assume what keeps sending the metal detector off. The Spinal Tap, it's like a fake band that became a band because they played at Glastonbury as Spinal Tap, right? They released an album, and the whole story about it is, one of the side stories is that they come to America to release an album, but no one will carry it because of the cover that they have. So they create just a pure black cover, and it's just black. And there's a hilarious scene about when they're discussing this. Fran Drescher, she's in it, the nanny. She plays one of the characters in it. There is the Yoko Ono type interfering girlfriend. It's just all of the cliches of a rock band. They're hard living, partying, English accents, started making psychedelic music. And then the whole thing ends with them going off to Japan and making it big in Japan. I mean, in terms of the press tour for it, like they booked like slots on Good Morning America, and they were on like legit talk shows as Spinal Tap promoting this documentary, which they now as characters are very upset about because they feel it made them look stupid. The reason it's in the news is Rob Reiner at Cannes is shopping around to make a sequel. listen, some of the people involved in this have gone on to be so successful, they could probably like fund it themselves. So we'll probably have a This Is Spinal Tap 2 coming up soon.
There's a few big names you have not mentioned.
Yes. There's a lot of, there are a ton of cameos of people who've gone on to be huge. That, yes, at the time they were nobodies.
Angelica Houston, Billy Crystal,
Dana Carvey,
Howard Heston. You did mention him, but you glossed over who Christopher Guest actually is.
Do you want to maybe give your...
Yes. So in my universe, Christopher Guest is probably best known for another mockumentary called Best in Show.
Yes.
Which is one of the funniest movies you will watch in your life. Like, it's hilarious. He's so good at the genre. Like, he really knows what he's doing. I think it needs to be said.
He also did Mascots, if you've ever seen that on Netflix. It's another mockumentary about sports team mascots.
Okay.
So he's also done that. So yeah, okay, quite right. He was in The Princess Bride as well, which I've never seen. So Yet. And interestingly married to Jamie Lee Curtis. The two funniest bits, the most memorable bits of This Is Spinal Tap is there is a whole scene, a whole build up about the Stonehenge set. They got a song called Stonehenge. And the set that they want built. But because the manager's all over the place, he gives the wrong dimensions and there's no time to fix it. And the set now, the whole thing gets built up to them dropping the Stonehenge set onto the stage. But at the tiny little dimensions that he's now left in his notes. There's that.
I remember that, actually.
And then there is this. So if you say to anybody, ramp it up to 11, and they respond, you know they're a Spinal Tap fan. Take a listen to this.
This is a top to what we use on stage, but it's very, very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11,
the amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? It's not 10. You see, most blokes, be playing at 10. You're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there? Where?
I don't know.
Nowhere, exactly. What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. One louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
So
that's so good.
That is what you can expect from This Is Spinal Tap.
You know musos like that, right?
Oh, of
That's
course.
why it's so good.
They're all, and they totally commit. They do not, like, it's actually, you reach a point where you're like, they're not acting. Like, they have embodied these characters, and I think that's what makes it's so good and so memorable. So that is Grease 2, and This Is Spinal Tap, our movie recommendation. That's definitely a good weekend.
Like a theme going with our movies this week.
Definitely. That's a good weekend. That's a fun weekend at home. It's, so balance it up.
I have to say your movie's better than mine. Okay. It is way better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'll take that. I don't mind that. So that's your choice. We've given you the choice. Make the informed decision, Top Gun Maverick or Grease 2, and This Is Spinal Tap. This is That 80 Show, and if you may be listening to this on the podcast, you know that we play music, and we've not been able to share the music with you, but we're trying something out on Mixcloud, Dori. Mixcloud, it's this internet thing.
It sounds so futuristic.
Oh, indeed it is futuristic. As this show plays out live on a Friday at 10 o'clock on cliffcentral.com, we do have music, and with Mixcloud, we're able to take that exact song and you can hear it on Mixcloud. We pay a subscription. They sort out the music rights. You hear the song with all the music in it, which is nice because you give a break from us. Like, it's like, if you like listening to the podcast, you go, now I at least get a break from them with a song every now and again. And we play the hits. Only play the hits on that 80 show. Dori,
they're all hits to us.
They're all hits to us. Dori, we're all broke. We're all broke as shit.
Yep.
No matter where you are in the world right now, times are tough. I don't know why we're broke. It's just things are more expensive. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that.
It's Russia's fault.
Oh, it could be. I imagine it's bears bonds hedging. Like I imagine it's those things. Businesstech.co.za put out a article going, I don't know why they randomly chose 1980. It's got something to do when last CPI index 102.4 something. That's why they chose 1980 as the year. It's like let me read why, because if you're clever, you'll go. Stats SA data shows that in April 1980, the CPI headline index was set at 3.2. By comparison, the CPI headline index is at 102.4. That's today. To calculate today's value of 100 Rand, one must blah, blah. Okay, right. They chose 1980. It's a fucking reason they did. Okay, people know. And it goes through what something cost in 1980 versus what you're paying for it today, right? 42 years later. A 2-liter milk, 1 Rand 72 in 1980, 28 Rand today. Hedging on 29 Rand, right? Got to brush your teeth.
Sure.
Got to brush our teeth. Toothpaste, 1980, 1 Rand versus 15.49 nowadays, which I still think is one of the cheapest things you buy. What else we got here? Simba chips.
But I mean, there's 100 different new toothpastes to choose from today versus what was in the 80s.
True. That's so true. Like now toothpaste is like an aisle. Like there's an aisle just of toothpaste.
Yeah.
It's like, right. Before it was Colgate and Aquafresh. And that's it.
That was it.
Simba chips, 99 cents for the big bag, right? In 1980, 18 Rand 32 now. No note here on how much air is in the bag. So how much of that 99 cents bought you air. Kellogg's cornflakes, 1 Rand 49 versus 45.49 right now. And
sure, that's a big difference.
Cheese and lamb chops, right? A kilogram of cheese, 6 Rand, which in 1980, that sounds very expensive even then. We're talking cheese. Sounds very expensive then.
Yeah.
137 Rand 45 for a kilogram now.
That's nuts.
Who's buying a kilogram of cheese? And I assume this is like cheddar cheese, right? Like normal cheddar cheese. I can't imagine we're getting brie. And lamb chops, 6.69 then, which again sounds like it was expensive. It sounds like that was a treat per kilo versus 194, almost 200 Rand per kilogram now for lamb chops. So that's why we're broke. That's why we're broke. We could go take our crisp 5 Rand note and walk out with toothpaste and chips. You brush your teeth after you eat your chips. It just was symbiotic, and we got our change out of our 5 Rand note. Because Russia was bad in the 80s, Dori. You can't blame Russia, just them.
I think it's, just affects different things, different times.
Yeah, we don't even know. Let's not pretend, because we don't know what the CPI 3.2 headline, we don't know what that is.
We are not economists.
No,
we are not.
So we're evidently not. We know 1980s, and we know Boy George, he's angry with Posh Spice. Jesus Christ. What is happening?
What? I don't know the story. Tell me what's going on.
Boy George turned 61 recently. He tweets, let me read his tweet. He deleted this tweet, but it reads, people found it, screen grab that. Nice touch for @British Airways to leave everyone in first class waiting for steps while Victoria Beckham's car picks her up at the aircraft. Flying first class, obviously. I mean, why, both of them, why are you not flying private?
He was upset that she got some extra special treatment that he didn't get. That's basically, it sounds like the day you start feeling sorry for like multi-millionaires is the day you've gone wrong in your life. But it's a Twitter feud. So he posted that and then he deleted it. Obviously, he's sitting on there. You're cranky. Even in business class, evidently you're cranky after a flight. I assume transatlantic flight. Why they're not flying private? I mean, they've obviously done something wrong there. But it is the latest in a long-running feud between Boy George and the Spice Girls, right? So I didn't know there was a feud between them.
That's why we bring you up to the 80s news about feuds between Culture Club and Spice Girls. So Culture Club are touring, right? They've just gone on a bit of a tour, playing a few gigs. They were in America, and now they end up on the same plane as Posh Spice, flying back to London. So it's now, this feud started, it's been running for a while. In 2018, they were both at a radio station doing an interview, and Boy George went to her and he asked her to write something silly. He said, please, I need an autograph from you. Write something silly for me. So she's like, Posh Spice is probably the least fun one, right? She doesn't come across as, but, she's, but I'm sure she's fun, but like, that's not her persona. She wrote on his autograph thing, to the bitch, fuck off. That's gonna upset me. I don't care who you are. Boy George's feelings got hurt. Okay, so he gets hurt.
That's so weird.
Yeah,
that's such a weird thing to write.
Then in 2012, so it goes back even a bit earlier than this. He tweets in 2012. I mean, he must have been one of the only people on Twitter then. This month, I've met 3 Spice Girls, Emma, Jerry, and today Mel C, who was very sweet. Isn't it nice to be grown up? One more to go. So kind of like throwing shade at her. And it's so petty that he won't let, so he's a judge on The Voice. He won't let people sing Spice Girl songs. Okay. If you sing a Spice Girl song on The Voice, he's done with you. He doesn't want to know. He doesn't allow the contestants to sing Spice Girl songs. Okay. But we're not over yet, right? He tweeted again.
Yeah.
Girl power, the Spice Girls were a calculated male conspiracy, or was it the Russians? Adding to the tension between George and the Spice Girls may have been Jerry Horner's links to George Michael. Well, now we're interested. Jerry was famously very close to the late singer, calling him her father figure. I doubt that she called him that. It seems right for tabloid tattle. Okay. But Boy George admitted they had a bitchy relationship with one another. Now, I assume this is Jerry Halliwell and not him and George Michael. So that is the long-running feud between, it seems like just Victoria Beckham and Boy George. Whose side are you on, Dori?
I mean, between those two, I'll side with Boy George.
Oh.
Just because.
Okay, so what feud would you be anti-Boy George?
Well, it's just, I don't have a lot of time. I mean, I don't hate the Spice Girls per se. I'm sure they are perfectly fine individuals. I mean, she's particularly, out of all of them, she is probably the one I would like least. I don't know. She's just never really interested me in any way. Whereas Boy George is, well, he's Boy George, and I love Karma Chameleon.
I back the 80s person all the time. All the time. No matter, I don't even want to hear, I just back you. It's like, right, what are you saying? That's what happens. I back you. Don't leave Boy George waiting in first class. He's going to be very angry with you, and he's going to tweet about you and then, then delete
seriously, first world problems. Seriously.
It really does sound like it. I mean, here we are, not paying 99 cents for a packet of chips, and Boy George is complaining about Posh Spice getting preferential treatment. This has been That 80s Show. Once again, please, if you listen, you want to share it, if you're listening on the podcast, go take a listen on Mixcloud, That 80 Show SA on Facebook. Get the podcast, That 80 Show SA, share it with your friends because we're hilarious, or use it for legal reasons, whichever way a download's a download. We don't care. Dori, what did you learn from the show this week?
I have learned that minimal French synth pop is potentially superior to maximal French synth pop.
Put on a t-shirt, put on a tweet, Boy George. We're coming for you. Thanks for joining me, Dori. Goodbye.
Bye.